I think that what was very interesting for me today was to just look at the kinds of projects that you are developing now, because the thing that is fascinating about that is the way in which we're seeing an evolution of thinking from the 80s on into the present, where there started to be a kind of consideration within Paris of these kinds of projects that would really try to stabilize the participation of blue-collar workers within the city, and today you're really finding mechanisms for that. And I find this very fascinating that you have now found new tools for developing this within RATP. How did this evolve?
Well, actually, the point is that from 1980s to today, the question of oil, actually, and the price of the barrel, and also the urban policies which have been undertaken by the municipality of Paris, but also by all the municipalities around the, well, across the country, have put the stress upon the public transportation system and network. So now we're much more sensible than we used to be to the very price of our infrastructure. 20 years before, we took that kind of plans and we sold them. But today, it is more than gold within the city. So, we have now decided, I have decided to keep and keep and keep. But I can't afford to keep such plans in the middle of the city like they are. So we have to undertake a transformation process which is clever enough to mix, as I said, population, type of users, and so on.
But I think it's fantastic now. It seems like it's a really diverse portfolio that's emerging, where you're seeing you know, a kind of differentiated set of projects for different parts of the city. You're working with central city areas, but also, of course, looking at the same kinds of things in the periphery.
Yeah, because we are working, you're perfectly right. You're perfectly right, because the planning process itself has evolved. I do that kind of job. I've worked on that kind of job for 20 years. And I see now that the presence of the civil servants, of the municipalities, and of the neighborhoods is much more accurate than it used to be. Well, 20 years ago, you just deposit your, I don't know the word in English, but I think something like a permit for building at the city hall, and that's it. Today, you have to knock at the door, to take the advice of people, of neighborhood communities, and to try to get through the different types of constraint within your minds the question of the public interest. So there is a shift between a mayor who is supposed to, and who is still supposed to, undertake the public interest, and the neighborhood communities who claim the right to say their words, and yourself, because yourself we have financial constraints and stuff like that. So you have to get through these different points, and it's a much more complex city today than it used to be when you're a planner.
I think this was something that came through in the discussions today, is that at one time it seems to me that we had really quite different attitudes about how to deal with the public in the past, and we would see a different attitude from policymakers, practitioners, and the academic community. They would each have really quite diverse views about the way in which a public would engage with a project. I think something of what we were seeing today is that we're starting to see a kind of convergence and a redefinition of how you address stakeholders. And there's a kind of synergy now, it seems, between the academic community and people who are at the point of attack the way you are.
Yeah, but I would say unfortunately. I would say unfortunately because I don't know the word in English, well, the expression in English, but in French you say le feu est à la maison. The fire is in the house. And with some 10% unemployment rate, with more than 25% of unemployment rate for young people in the suburbs of Paris, there is an evidence is that everybody across the board has to work together to try to put in front of the screen a new kind of model for our cities.
Yeah.
A model where the energy,
Yeah.
this fantastic energy, can be driven to a sustainable model.
Yeah.
I really believe we have many things to do with that, because as a practitioner, well, I studied urban economics when I was young, but as a practitioner, you get rid of, little by little, you're like a boat, and you lose the contact
You
with your
drift away.
basic, you drift away.
Yeah.
And when this afternoon I heard the three first speakers, just before I present my staff, I was really re-enchanté. I was really,
Yeah,
it was
re-enchanted, yes.
it was a return to my basis, to
Yeah.
my fundamental basis.
Yeah.
So it helps.
Yeah.
It helps for
Yeah.
me. It gives me new tools. Well, or it gives a new burst for the ancient tools.
Yeah.
And it gave me tools, anyways, to have a new approach of my daily job.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I think that today, the situation today of our city is tragic compared to what it was 20 years ago, when the growth was up and
Yeah.
the unemployment.
I think this is another thing that would be interesting to develop. I mean, the peculiarities of Paris are well known, and it would be very intriguing to explore as another aspect of this community of competence, in a way, why we see different sorts of patterns emerging in different parts of the world, different ways in which we're seeing communities engaged and brought into the process. I suppose this will be perhaps a second round. I almost feel like we're at an early stage right now in beginning to explore how we would start to structure something like workspace urbanism and really think about treating planning as though its primary ambition should be the generation of jobs, a new pattern of inclusivity in the way of looking at people as actors in the development of an economy.
That's right, and the problem we have in Paris, actually, and in France, by and large, is the problem of governance. We have four levels of decision in terms of urban planning.
Yeah.
You have the city, you have the department, you have the region, and you have the state.
Yeah.
So it is just impossible in
Yeah.
a world of complexity, when you are a planner or when you deposit a building for a permit for building, it is just impossible to handle all the topics, the political topics that people have contracted with that kind of community, with that one and with that one and with that one. So France has, first of all, a major challenge, which is to simplify its way of governance.
Yes.
For what concerns the city.
Yeah. You know,
for what concerns everything, actually.
I think that's right. You know, and I'm struck by when we think about science and technology parks as being instruments for job generation. I mean, the key advantage they have is being able to construct a kind of one-stop shop for all the service delivery for corporations. Of course, we recognize that it's the wrong environment for them to be in.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we're wanting to look at these days is exactly what you're starting to do, which is how do we uncouple the kind of service delivery aspects of that which goes into the science and technology parks, retain that, uncouple that, however, from the land management aspects of the science park. And the intriguing thing is that I'm discovering that a number of the park operators are saying the same thing. They don't want to manage land.
Yeah.
They want to deliver services.
That's right. That's right.
And so now it's what we kind of want to be doing is to think about, okay, so how do we look at cities as though the challenge is service delivery to those who will really generate the next steps in the economy.
It's a wide question.
Yeah.
Really, it's an open question for me too.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to manage land,
Yeah.
except if you can make some profit
Yes.
with speculation or rent or whatever.
Yeah.
But you also have to manage land because it's a essential facility.
Yeah.
because it's what I said in French with armature urbaine, because it is infrastructure, because some infrastructures in our developed countries cost anyhow more than what they earn.
But see,
So putting on that kind of infrastructure activities like that is very important. But you also have to draw the line between what has to deal with the interest of the community and what has to deal with demand side of the economy.
yes.
So,
But clearly, if you think about what you've just said, in a way, RATP is a much better prospect for the management of land because of the role of the infrastructure
yeah, sure.
than the science park managers, for example.
Yeah, sure,
And so we might begin to look at this as something where we begin to distinguish who really has the role of management land.
Yeah, because we are the last one. Well, not RATP, but RATP or London, Transport for London or wherever. But these kind of companies are the last ones which create jobs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the relation between land and job is an ancestral relation.
Yeah.
Land gives job.
Yeah.
So, and suddenly, land doesn't give job, except to the urban developer.
Yeah.
But, and except to me.
Yeah.
But, so suddenly, you shift from an ancestral habit of your practice to something you don't really know where you are. You know that people in your company can work at home because they're in the web or wherever, and everybody is lost.
Yeah.
In our companies, the last ones, railways and stuff like that, land still creates job, which is something marvelous and somehow romantic.
And creates jobs and shapes cities.
And
together.
shapes cities, that's right. And
Yes.
we have to reshape the cities on the basis of what they used to do now 1 century and a half ago.
Yeah.
So it's a hard job. It's a hard job, but deserve.
Yes.
It's worth to test it. So cheers.
Excellent. Okay. So
Cheers.